What are the best songs from Psalm 13? I'm Daniel Mount, joined today by my co-host, Pastor Chad Berry, and we'll answer that question on today's episode of the Expository Songs Podcast. We've each picked 8 songs, and we haven't compared notes. Pastor Chad, what's your number 8 song?
Yeah, before I mention my number 8 song, I just want to share for the listener, if you're singing through the Psalms or if you're preaching in Psalm 13, Psalm 13 is really well represented, as you probably realize by the fact that we have 8 songs instead of the usual 5. But with that, yes. The song that I put in at number 8 was Psalm 13 Word for Word by Zach Fitzsimmons. I wanted there to be at least one truly quoted song represented in my top 8 because there were several that were really good. And I thought Zach's was just really a standout, singable, and matched the mood of the psalm itself really, really well.
Yes. I actually went a similar direction for my 8th place song. I have Psalm 13, 5, and 6 by Catherine Melodie McCluskey. It's a simple scripture song, word for word, but the simplicity is not a bad thing. It has a nice melody, it's easy to remember, and it might be at the top of the list of settings of this psalm that I've just randomly caught myself humming around the house. And since it focuses on the last 2 verses of the psalm, it's also happier and more joyful than anything else on my list. Since I didn't have really anything else that was happy and joyful, and this was, I think, probably the best of the word-for-word settings, I thought it was worth a shout-out at my number 8 spot.
Excellent. At number 7, I put in Psalm 13 by the Psalms Project. Everything that they've done is really good. They've been represented on my lists several times throughout the Psalms, and I'll mention kind of similar to what you said. This one is not upbeat and happier feeling. Almost all the songs on my list have more of the lament feel to it. Several of the songs have an upbeat feel, and that felt a little odd to me as I read. It seems odd to sing those words, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever?" in this real anthemic type of way. But the Psalms Project, I thought, had a really good setting of this particular psalm.
Yeah. I definitely considered that one too. My number 7 pick is, I think, probably a little bit out of left field compared to everything else I have on the list. And it's How Long, Psalm 13 by Kiran, Wimberly, and the McGraths. There are a lot of good songs from this psalm. And by the point I got my list down to a top 10, I was like, how do I get to 8? Or 5. We couldn't get to 5. There are just too many good ones. How do I get to 8? And for those last few, one of the factors I considered was, can I say anything unique about this song? Because there were several in that top 10 that were so similar stylistically to other ones I'd also mentioned. So I just kind of picked the ones that had the best lyrics. This one is really different, though. It's really calm. It's tranquil. It's practically a lullaby. And yet, despite being this calm, tranquil, practically lullaby, it covers the whole psalm without something we've seen in some other songs of seeming too forced at any point about forcing lyrics into a melody that doesn't make sense. So that was pretty unique. It's a good song. And for me, that was the tiebreaker to get it into my top 8.
I had that one as one of my runners-up. So, yeah, liked that one a lot. Number 6, I had Consider by Jamie Souls. And what I think Jamie Souls did with this song really well, melodically, I felt like he blended kind of the anthemic nature of knowing. Like when we read Psalm 13 and David is asking those questions, how long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? We all know that God hasn't forgotten David, but that's how David feels. And I think that Jamie Souls did a really good job in this song of kind of musically capturing both of those ideas, the anguish of how David is feeling and simultaneously the certainty of knowing that God has dealt bountifully with him and with us. And so I really liked that about that song.
That was definitely one of my runners-up, and if I recall correctly, it's like at number 2 on my runners-up list. I think it was in my top 10, one of my last cuts that I didn't quite whittle down to my top 8. So that's high on my runners-up list. At number 6, I have How Long, O Lord, Psalm 13 by Abe and Lisa Phillip. On this one, I like that the lyrics cover the whole psalm and do it well.
Mm-hmm.
But what makes this one really stand out to me is that the emotional arc of the melody and the arrangement follow the emotional arc of the psalm really well.
Mm-hmm.
Both the psalm and the song start out lamenty and finish on a more joyful note.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like an exuberant, over-the-top joyfulness. It's like a restrained or pensive joyfulness, but still there's joy there. And I feel like this song follows that emotional arc probably about as well as any.
Yeah, that one was pretty high on my list too. It didn't make my top 8, but that was one that was in the consideration for quite a while. At number 5, I put Song of Lament by Alliance Worship. Very similar on that one to what you just said about Abe and Lisa's song. And really songs 5 through 1, for me, I think the lyrics of all of them are really strong, and kind of the deciding factor between where I placed them was usability in corporate worship. And this song would be, I think, very easy to sing, and really good. Really good.
Yeah, that song. So I've heard several of their others for other psalms and haven't connected as well with them. But this one I connected with, and that one was definitely on my runners up too. It's definitely in those last 10 or 15 that I was whittling down. So that's very good, and I agree. At my number 5, I have Psalm 13 by the Corner Room. What they do is they set the ESV to music word for word. And there are other word-for-word settings of the entire psalm out there. But this one, even compared to some of their own other tracks, when you're going word for word for an entire psalm, sometimes you just have to sacrifice a little bit of musicality and a little bit of singability as the trade-off for getting every word in. This one does so well, I think, at getting every word in without making it seem like it's a word-for-word setting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a word-for-word setting that doesn't feel like one, and I think that's a compliment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was another one. Their setting was between their setting and Zach Fitzsimmons for me for the word for word setting.
Yeah.
At number 4, I had How Long, O Lord, by Dan Becker. Again, it felt like the song just followed the emotional arc of the psalm well, and a really simple, easy, straightforward way to introduce the psalm in corporate worship, and a really just well done arrangement.
Great. My number 4 is a little different stylistically. It's How Long by Michael Card. This song was, I have nostalgia on this one. I got to confess up front. It was my entry point to Psalm 13 settings. First one I really got to know well, over 25 years ago. And for the last 25 years plus, maybe getting on 30 now, I'm not sure, it's been the first song that I think of when I think of this psalm.
Mm-hmm.
It comes to mind first. But there are reasons beyond nostalgia where I still think it's a top 5 setting of the psalm, although I didn't let nostalgia alone bump it to number 1. But first, a caveat. I recommend this one more for personal edification than congregational use. I don't think it would sing that well as a congregation as it does in this setting. With that said, there are dozens of modern settings of this psalm, and a lot of them fall in a pretty narrow stylistic spectrum, somewhere around sorrow to lament, right? And those aren't the same thing, but they're pretty close in the stylistic spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you only listen to one song from Psalm 13 mixed in with other singings of the psalm, that's fine. If you only sing one in church, that's fine, because you're contrasting that against the other psalms and other non-psalm songs you might be singing. But if you're going to listen to 5 or 10 songs from Psalm 13 on a regular basis, it can help to have one that has a different stylistic approach to help them all from running together a little. And this song brings out where it is on the emotional spectrum. It's like somewhere in the range of frustration and desperation, which this psalm has those feelings. It's okay, I think, to get that from this psalm. It's something the source text allows, and not really something I see in any of the other songs I have in my top 8, or even really in that top 15 or 20 that I was whittling down to my top 8. So it's unique. I don't think you maybe want one that's, in that frustration or desperation place as the one setting the psalm you sing congregationally, but I think it's good for personal edification.
At the risk of straying too far down a rabbit trail, I'm still going to ask this question. Michael Card was kind of like, his music was some of the earliest that you kind of identified as like contemporary is not the right word, but like modern expositional music. Like that's the kind of music I want to do.
The way he script song after song after song, carefully treated one section of scripture then another. That was the first thing for me that was like, I want to do that, both as a writer and then as trying to find everything anywhere in Christian music that does that is that he helped establish for me. And when I say this was early on, the first song I heard, the first cassette tape I heard of his was his cassette tape of songs from the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. Then his cassette tape from the wisdom books. I actually, this song was on, I think was like the second tape I heard. So this song and I go way back.
Yeah, nice. I think that brings me to number 3, and at number 3 I have How Long, O Lord by Peter Crockett. I couldn't help but just really love. It's him singing, and then there's clearly a group of people, and it sounds like it's just him on a guitar, maybe a piano, and then just a bunch of people singing, and it's just it was a little bit of an earworm for me, one that I just kept coming back to and coming back to and coming back to. So I had to put it pretty high on my list.
Neat. So at number 3 I have How Long, written by Jeremy Geddert and recorded by Rachel Wilhelm. Rachel Wilhelm is a lament specialist. Now, I discussed that with her when she came on this podcast and used that phrase, and I should clarify here, as I did there, I don't mean that laments are all she writes or all that she writes well. She writes and records other genres well, including a particular strength in imprecatory songs. But what I do mean when I say that she's a lament specialist is twofold. She has a particular passion for writing laments, and she's widely recognized for doing it especially well. With all that said, she's recorded 3 settings of Psalm 13, and it's a little ironic, given all that I just said, that the one I think is the best is the one she didn't write. This one was written by Jeremy Geddert, but it has this soaring, creative minor key melody that fits her style perfectly. The lyrics are simple but powerful, and I think I would say the melody is the best melody among any of my picks, maybe even among any of my runners-up. It's a really strong melody.
I'll go ahead and put my commercial in for her. I had both of her settings on my runners-up, and really for on the runners-up list when we got there, I wasn't necessarily going to talk about either of the pieces specifically, but about her, because she does, like, she's the
queen of lament.
Yeah, she is one of the best lament songwriters, maybe the best. And her settings are just so good, and her voice, even just the tonal quality of her voice, fits that style of music well. And so if anybody's never listened to her music, I would encourage you to go back and listen to the episode of the Expository Songs podcast she came on to, and then look up her music. It's all really, really good.
Before you move on, while we're talking about her music, I'll just throw in my runner-up mention on her here, because it kind of makes sense in this part of the conversation. So the other runner-up I had for her was her Father Do You See, that she wrote, I believe, and recorded with Cardiphonia Music. It's just a phenomenal melody. She's also a phenomenal melody writer, but it's more of a thematic connection. And it was just a little bit too loose to make a top 5 or top 8 when I had 8 really good songs that are just straight from the psalm. But Father Do You See just is an incredible song too.
Yeah. At number 2, we'll ease the listener's anticipation. How Long, O Lord, by My Soul Among the Lions. There's not really anything more that I can say about My Soul Among the Lions than we've already said. When it comes to writing psalm settings, in terms of people, I mean, I know that's been a little while since they've written the ones that they've done so far, because I think they wrote through 25 or 20, can't remember now,
something like that. They recorded solid albums, I think through 20, but then they put out another album that had, or maybe even through 30, but then they recorded another album that had several from the next batch.
Yeah, and their settings are just, you're hard pressed to find a better setting of the psalm than what My Soul Among the Lions is putting out right now. It's just really good stuff.
Want to guess what my number 2 was?
My Soul Among the Lions?
You got it. Same song. Same song, same spot. I try to have at least one song that covers the themes of an entire psalm high in my picks, because there's a lot of value to that. And I think this is the best full psalm setting. Tries to cover every theme, every verse. The recorded version is really simple, has room to breathe. It won't pull in somebody who's looking for the energy of a radio hit, but for a congregation that's accustomed to singing hymns and modern hymns, I think this song would be really easy to pick up. And among those songs that treat the entire psalm is, I think, the one that would do the best congregationally.
I agree. Yep. Which is why I also
have
it
at
at
number 1.
2. So at number 1, I have How Long, O Lord, How Long by Sovereign Grace. I have to confess, I love this song in general. I like a lot of what Sovereign Grace does. But I've got a little bit of a commercial, and I was a little bit biased in this song because this song was written by one of my best friends. So Matt Carpenter was one of the co-writes on this song, and if his name sounds familiar to anyone, it's because he's been on as part of the Grace Collective. He's done a handful, twice. That's right. I think once by himself, and then the second time with Joel. It's just a really, Sovereign Grace has been doing a lot of really solid stuff for a really long time. And all of their music, especially what they've been putting out in the last 5 to 10 years, the vast majority of it is geared towards congregational worship. And so twofold, it's a great song. It's also a little bit of a hat tip to one of my closest college friends.
So want to guess what my number 1 is? We did it. This is maybe the first time ever. First time in a long time that we had the same top 2 in the same order.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. And this song isn't the song for somebody who really only wants strict versifications or as close as possible. It's not the song for somebody who wants every verse of the song covered. If you do that, you're probably going with My Soul Among Lions on this one. But what it does is it starts with the laments of Psalm 13's opening verses, and then it really pivots to the promises of Lamentations 3. The promises of new mercies with each rising sun and of God's steadfast love. And I love that pivot because I really like how those two passages play together. Their arrangement is contemporary enough to work in contemporary praise churches. I know that some of the listeners of this podcast are in churches that have a praise band, and some of the more traditional sounding or modern hymn sounding songs don't always work the best for some of the listeners. This is probably the best pick for songs that might sing some Hillsong or Bethel, or if they object to those for theological reasons, something else in that style. But this song at its core, let's take away the arrangement, the song at its core, I think, would also work perfectly well in a hymns or modern hymns context. It's just a great song, period, as well as being a great congregational song. And yeah, of course, I don't know as well as you do, but he was so kind to come on the podcast twice. Matthew Carpenter's role in co-writing it was definitely a bias for me for ranking it high too.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt really is he's such a great songwriter.
He is. I want to have one little technical note for those readers or for those listeners who might be a little confused on this point. Our internet connection today is not quite as good as it is sometimes, and so we have a bit of lag time today. It might feel like we talked over each other a little bit. That I don't think that was either of our intentions. It's just we start saying something and didn't realize the other person was still talking due to a little bit of lag time. So just a little programming note there. So I believe that brings us on to our runners-up. And of those that we haven't already covered, what other songs do you want to give a quick shout-out to?
So I'll just mention the ones that I haven't already mentioned, and I'll just name the song and the artist. So How Long by Adrian, I think it's pronounced Rouse, Rowse, maybe it's Roos. How Long, and there's two arrangements by this one. I think the melodies were the same by Brian Duerksen and the Shire Poets. At least as I listened to them, they sounded very similar. So I put both of them on there. Both arrangements are really good.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah, that song, the Brian Dorkson Sheer Poets, was also on mine. And I had a conversation with one of the guys from the exclusive Psalmody podcast we did. The Worship Review. One of the guys in the Worship Review is a linguist by profession, and he looked up, I think it's on their website somewhere. He found out somewhere it's supposed to be called the Sheer Poets. I thought the Shire is like a Tolkien nod, and he's like, but there's this linguistic root of this or that that the Sheer makes so much sense, and so he looked it up and it was Sheer. So I said Shire in several podcast episodes prior, so it's a totally understandable thing. He looked up, and I need to get that out there at some point before I forget.
Yeah, I believe in that conversation. Because I think he had mentioned that maybe the Hebrew word for sing,
maybe it's Hebrew,
is the word sheer, something to that
like
effect. That. Where was I? Psalm 13 by Poor Bishop Hooper. Psalm 13 by Trinity Life Church. The only point that I'll mention on that song, and I almost put that one in my top 8 because where the focus of a lot of the other arrangements are on the question, how long, O Lord? Psalm 13 by Trinity Life Church, the focal point is on verses 5 and 6, which is more the promise, but I've trusted in your steadfast love, and my heart will rejoice in your salvation, and I will sing to the Lord. And then the last runner-up was How Long by Brent McCune. Every listener needs to just go subscribe to his YouTube channel. He's only got like 4 subscribers, but he's a pretty good songwriter.
Neat. We had a lot of overlap in our runners-up, so a few that haven't come up yet. Let's see. So I mentioned all 3 of Rachel Wilhelm's. I don't know if I specifically mentioned her song titled Psalm 13 was also a runner-up for me. We already talked about Alliance Worships. How Long, O Lord by Dan Shute. Consider Me by Poems of Grace or Peter and Grace Assad, who are another alums of the podcast. How Long by Steve Bell. And I Will Trust in Your Unfailing Love by A Common Psalter were all other settings that really stood out to me.
Before we jump to the retuning challenge,
Sure.
I forgot to mention this. I didn't put it in as a runner-up, and I can't remember if it was actually on the list or if I just stumbled across it in my prep. But I came across somebody who had set the words to Psalm 13 to the tune of Come Ye Sinners. And I didn't love the lyrical arrangement of the one that I found, but I opened my Bible and I love the song Come Ye Sinners. And I particularly love that melody because it's in a minor key, but there are elements about it that are still kind of anthemic. We're actually singing it at our church this coming Sunday. And I was humming the words to Psalm 13 to that tune, and it would fit really well. So if anybody knows the melody to Come Ye Sinners, Poor and Needy, and wants to try their hand at setting Psalm 13 to music, that would be a good melody to try.
Interesting. So I believe that brings us up to our retuning challenge, which are lyrics that we really like that could use a new melody, a retuning. And I believe we both have 2. So would you like to start us off?
Sure. The first one that I had was "How Long Will Thou Conceal Thy Face" by Isaac Watts. I'll just read the first 2 verses. He writes and he says, "How long will thou conceal thy face? My God, how long delay? When shall I feel those heavenly rays that chase my fears away? How long shall my poor laboring soul wrestle and toil in vain? Thy word can all my foes control and ease my raging pain." Just the picture painted with those words is, to me, just really incredible.
Believe it or not, my number 2 pick is the same song. Watts wrote 2 settings of this psalm. "How long, O Lord, shall I complain" is the other one. And that other one is the one you go for if you're looking for more of a strict paraphrase. This one's not a strict paraphrase, and it has more New Testament themes pulled in. And here's the funny thing. You read verses 1 and 2. I was going to read verse 3, so I'll just still go for it.
Perfect.
"See how the prince of darkness tries all his malicious arts. He spreads a mist around mine eyes and throws his fiery darts." I really like the New Testament implications of that one and the rest of the song, how it tied in New Testament themes.
Yeah.
So what is the top of your list on the retuning challenge?
Yeah, so it was, I didn't see an author named anywhere, so if you know who the author is, feel free to bail me out on that. But it's "How Long Will Thou Forget Me?" And it was really the third verse. I mean, all of the verses of this song are good, but it was really the third verse that stuck out to me, which says, "But I with expectation have on thy grace relied. My heart in thy salvation shall still with joy confide. And I with voice of singing will praise the Lord above, who richest bounties bringing has dealt with me in love." And I thought that was just a really beautiful word picture of the promises of verses 5 and 6 of Psalm 13.
Neat. No, I don't know the author on that one. Generally speaking, if I've been able to track down the author, I have in the database. Occasionally, there might be one I know and don't have, but I don't know in that case. And my number 1 pick is "How Long Wilt Thou Forget Me, Lord" by Charles Wesley. And I really liked verses 9 and 10 in particular. And this is one where he covers the entire themes of the psalm and does it well. But his treatment of the last couple verses I really like, where he says, "My trust is in thy gracious power. I glory in salvation near. Rejoice in hope of that glad hour, when perfect love shall cast out fear. I sing the goodness of the Lord, the goodness I experience now, and still I hang upon thy word, my Savior to the utmost thou." So, Pastor Ted, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I believe you have a book that we can maybe give a shout out to here.
Yeah, sure. It's available on Amazon. It's just called Ecclesiastes, an Answer Key to Life's Big Questions, geared towards trying to help primarily unbelievers or very early Christians kind of get their arms around how the Bible answers the big questions. Why am I here? What's wrong with the world? Can it be fixed? Those types of things. If you just search my name, Chad Berry, or Ecclesiastes, an Answer Key to Life's Big Questions on Amazon, it'll come up. Or if you reach out on whatever platform, I'll send you a copy.
Thank you very much. And to the listener, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend and subscribe to catch future episodes. You can also find past episodes and the free 78,000 entry Expository Songs searchable database at expositorysongs.com. Thank you for listening.